Everyone. Lovely to meet you all. Really excited for this session. I will just pull up my screen and then we can kick off and get started. Cool. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Awesome. So this session is going to be on how to optimize your website to increase traffic, conversions, and brand trust. I'd imagine that it'll be slightly different to some of the other sessions that you've gone through. So really looking forward to it, and hopefully it gives you a sort of a different angle and approach to think about as you start to scale and think about investment and all those kind of things. It's the first time I've run this deck. It has around 90 slides. I'm aiming for the 30 to 40 minute mark, but we'll see what happens. We'll go from there, but I'm hoping that there's some time for questions at the end, and I'm sure that there will be. So to kick us off, a bit of a short introduction. So, hey, I'm Liam. A bit of a career overview from me. I am the SEO and Blu-ray Ignite director at Blu-ray. We essentially provide SEO, digital PR, app store optimization, and conversion rate optimization services. And part of my role is to work closely with startups and scale-ups through our Ignite program. So I've worked with quite a lot of startups that have come from us in different stages, some with very basic websites, others that have are a little bit more established, but essentially worked with lots of startups and scale-ups to help build and scale their sites to start generating traffic, but also looking at things like how you can improve user trust, increase that brand reputation, and some wider things as well. I previously worked in-house as a marketing lead in more of a generalist role, so covered things like podcasting, email copy, blog content, PPC, all those kind of things as well. So do have a sort of a wider range of knowledge outside of SEO, which is what I focus on now. And some career highlights so far. Hosted SEO events across London. One of them was at Google HQ, which was a really good time. And Shoreditch Town Hall, which is our sort of Blu-ray flagship event once a year. I won the Rising Star Agency Award in 2023, which was awesome to go to and a really nice surprise. And had around 10,000 downloads on my old podcast that I was running called 20 Minute Marketing that covered everything across the wide range of marketing spectrum. Just a few of the brands that I've worked with. We've got the RAC, Yale, Mail Online, and then some more startup appropriate websites like Zigzag, Together, Gaia, Cover, iWalker, Save My Exams. You might have heard of a few of those. So a real wide range of companies that I've worked with on either their SEO or general sort of marketing. So cool. We're going to kick off. I guess today's agenda, there are a few areas that we can run through. So first one is just covering the basics, why this deck will hopefully help. A few top level things around why you should care about your website. We look at how SEO fundamentals can help, and I'm a firm believer that those SEO fundamentals, if executed, will play into the bigger picture and strategy that you can leverage for both marketing and seeking investment. A few common mistakes, a short section on how to optimize for wider channels, and a quick summary. So first of all, just to kick off in the getting started section, I want to say a huge thanks to the 18 cohort members who replied to my Google form. I know that Purdy and M sent that out a few weeks ago. The data has ultimately been used to influence the structure and direction of the deck. And I've got some screenshots and examples to go through along the way that are relevant to your brands. There are some personalized recommendations in there, but it's worth noting that ultimately you know your brand and site's best. There might be a reason why you've done that. I'm looking at this from a third-party lens, but mainly from using all of my SEO experience. If you weren't part of that, if you didn't submit an answer to that Google form, don't worry too much. It was just some top-level questions to help me figure out what some of the challenges you might have are, what you're looking to get from this talk, and stuff like that. Some of the questions that were asked throughout that Google form are, is blog content still relevant? How can we launch a new domain for a product that we're launching soon? Looking at creative ways to achieve results over more established players, which is one that I'll touch on. Digital PR and backlinks, which we'll cover on one of the slides as well. How to convert traffic and drive signups, and how to bring PPC costs down. So covered most of these in some detail across the slide deck, and we'll unpack them as we go through. So cool. So covering the basics. So essentially, your website is a central place for all of your digital marketing activity. If you think of a website, it's usually the central place that people land on when they either go through direct traffic, SEO, email, referral links, paid links. I won't read them all, but you get the picture. Typically, when someone finds you on any type of channel, they tend to head to your website before making a purchasing decision or learning more about your brand. So it's usually hugely important that we are setting ourselves up for success by optimizing it as much as possible. Quite often, it's also the final touch point for a prospect before they make a purchasing decision or take action as well. And with this in mind, the experience that your site provides will significantly impact traffic conversions and your wider brand image as well. So where does traffic come from? So it's also likely that Google will refer most of your traffic. In March 2024, so a very recent study, 63% of all US web traffic referrals were initiated on google.com. So that includes all of those wider sites like YouTube, Facebook, Reddit, even OpenAI, ChatGPT. I think it was the top 180 or so websites in terms of volume. Google came out significantly in front when it comes to how are people finding your websites and how are they looking for you. And that's split through branded search, non-branded search, paid ads, SEO. But essentially, most people are probably going to land on your website by coming through Google. And while that's a US study, it probably is very similar in terms of numbers for the UK as well. And ultimately, as a result of this, a well-optimized site can help to build traction through increased customer interest, higher engagement, and potential revenue, which does have a knock-on effect and can help you with your fundraising efforts as well. So before we start and dive into the sort of core part of the talk, a few acknowledgements. So I'm well aware that you've all got different business offerings, you're at different company sizes, different industries, ages, funding rounds, and ultimately time is going to be the main blocker as founders when you maybe have a small team and you're responsible yourself for covering all of the bases. But hopefully this should give you some nuggets that you can go away and start thinking about and actioning yourself at some point in the near future. So let's explore some basic checks to conduct across your site then. So the first one is to provide a clear value proposition. So this is a really good example from OU Kitchens. Not sure if you're on the site, but this was one that I found that worked really well. Essentially, first impressions are critical. It takes around 0.05 seconds for a user to form an opinion about your site and decide whether to stay or leave. So I think a good first step is essentially to review the main copy on your homepage in isolation. So without scrolling further down the page, and think of it from the lens of someone who's visiting for the first time. Is it really clear what your value proposition is to them, or do they have to dig around the homepage or wider sites to really understand what it is that you're trying to sell to them or how you're supposed to help them? So this example from OU is really nice and clear. It says, find your next commercial kitchen. There's a clear USP there, clear action in terms of how that website can help people. And then it gives a short overview underneath around how it's a property marketplace for the food service industry. So think about those sort of main titles on your homepage or your product pages. And if you need to maybe add a little bit more copy or refine them in terms of making it easier for consumers to understand what it is that you're trying to sell. The second one is reviewing your above the fold content. So users spend around 57% of their page viewing time above the fold. So it's really critical to make their experience memorable at this stage of their journey. Otherwise, chances are they're probably going to go back or elsewhere to look for something that's easier for them to digest. And you can do that by making your content engaging, keeping your design simple, solving user challenges or problems, and avoiding clutter and distractions. So a few websites that submitted the Google form that I've just pulled out here were Any, and I don't know how to pronounce this name, sorry, so I won't attempt it by getting it wrong. But you can see here, like if a user looks at this and just reads uncomplicating social delight, like is it clear to them what your website is trying to help them serve? So it could be the case that you add some copy underneath that just to make it really clear what that value proposition is. And same with Any, where it says find your perfect room or space. To me, that could be, it could be a business room, it could be a sports venue, it could be an activity. So really think about who it is and that niche sort of area of services that you're looking to get consumers in, because it might not be clear from a first glance from someone who's looking for 1 second what it is that you're trying to help them with. The third one, which is a big one for me that I often find is the usual recommendations for startups and scale-ups, is to leverage individual products and service pages. Leveraging individual pages for each types comes with ultimately several benefits. First one is that it helps users to better understand your offerings, an improved website navigation and user journey. So this means that it helps users find what they're looking for easier. It removes clutter from your homepage by trying to list everything that you do on one single page. It increases organic traffic potential. If you're ultimately creating detailed pages for each individual one, then you can run PPC campaigns against them, or you can create landing pages off the back of that first design. And better PPC targeting and quality score. So if you're running Google Ads and you have detailed pages that are relevant to specific keywords, then typically you'll have a higher quality score, which means that you're paying less for paid advertising. So if we look at an example of what this could look like, previously we had a client that listed all of their IVF services in a small FAQ box on their homepage. So you can see here it says what types of IVF do you cover, and they say standard IVF, IVF and ISCI, sperm donor IVF, etc. And ultimately, those services have different success rates, prices, suitability, compatibility, all those kind of things. So users need more information to make an informed decision before going into one of those service streams. So what we did to work with them on this was to separate these pages out. So each page allowed us to ultimately provide detailed information about each service. And it also increased our likelihood of ranking through organic search and SEO by having dedicated search pages that answer specific questions. So you can see new pages, one's on IVF specifically. There's the second one that's how much does IVF cost with ICSI included. And then the third one is IVF with donor sperm. And we've seen good results off the back of that in terms of splitting those out, making it a little bit simpler for users to find what they're looking for and the details required around those as well. So something to think about if you've got maybe more than one product or service stream, splitting those out, creating clear content and information around each one individually. The fourth one is your website mobile friendly? Around 67% of web traffic comes from mobile devices. I think it's easy to fall into the trap of just optimizing on desktops when we usually work from a desktop 9 to 5, or in your case, it's probably longer than that through a daily basis. So aim for a clear page structure with digestible content and clear CTAs within your mobile device, because chances are that people are probably looking from mobile more than likely. And alongside this, Google takes a mobile-first approach to indexing content. So this is essentially where Google crawls your website to understand what's on the pages, and then they'll use that to determine essentially whether the page is valuable enough to put in their search engine and where to position it in terms of rankings. So they're doing this using mobile devices rather than desktop. So if you have a weaker mobile version of your site, it could potentially hinder your organic performance as well. A cool example here is from a brand called Together, who allow you to book events across the country. So things like weddings and business corporate events and things like that. You can see that they've got a visible brand name, a digestible tagline, concise benefits, which are easy to understand, 2 clear CTAs on the page, an estimated time required, which I think adds a lot of value in terms of users knowing how long it's going to take to go through a quote process. And then social proof, which is something that we'll come on to in a moment, but showing that they have 438 reviews adds that credibility around the value of their product and service. And then the final one is to use a consistent URL structure. So using consistent URL structure will help to make your site more manageable as you scale. And this is a key one. I think it can be quite complex. Further down the line, if you throw everything on your site without maybe thinking about where it's best place to be positioned, and then you come to scaling and find that you may have problems in terms of how it all feeds together. So I recommend taking a hierarchical approach, which also helps both users and search engines to navigate around your site more easily. So an example of this is a flat URL structure would be the Blu-ray website, having different service streams and blog content all sitting at a top level underneath the homepage, whereas a hierarchical URL structure is where we break it down for our services, guides. We might have company employees, other sections of the site, which really makes it more manageable as you scale when you start to think about slightly more complex strategies like internal linking for SEO and those kind of channels. So a few best practices on URL structure as well. So future-proof success by avoiding dates. So instead of saying best hair products 2024, we'd look at using best hair products. This ensures that in 2-3 years time, you can optimize those pages and it's not going to be a page that's outdated. Be consistent when using either a trailing slash or not. So you're more than fine to use a trailing slash at the end of URLs, but or not, but be consistent with the approach that you take. Stick to lowercase letters and condense where possible. So instead of using the best spring holiday destinations to consider, you can simplify it by just saying best spring holiday destinations. and use URL strings to define the contents of the page. So if you are talking about best spring holidays, make sure that that's in the URL string. It is a small ranking factor and helps search engines to understand what they're going to be seeing when they start crawling that page. A good example of this was from Buddy App. We can see that there's a blog post here that might have been created by your CMS automatically, but at the end of that, it has lots of random numbers and letters. So I'd recommend cleaning that up and moving with that, providing a clear summary of what the page is going to be about in your URL strings when you create new blog content. And if that's something that you'd like to speak about off the call, just give me a shout. My contact details are at the end, and we can sort of go through a process for that. So how SEO fundamentals can help. So the Google poll that I shared asked you to grade the following statement, and that is, I'm confident that my website is well optimized to generate and convert traffic through organic search. And the average score was 2.1 out of 5. So definitely some things that I'm hoping to share with you that will help you improve that score in this section of the deck. I'm going to cover the key pillars of SEO, and it's quite hard to cover an entire sort of marketing channel in 15 minutes of time. So I've very much picked out actionable tips and things that you can get started with as soon as possible. But these are content, technical SEO, links, and a concept called EEAT, which is going to feed nicely into wider channels and is all about building brand trust on your site. And why does SEO matter? So while the underlying goal of SEO is to increase organic traffic, the industry's evolved by focusing on quality brand and a user-first mindset. So I think, if you'd have asked someone 5-10 years ago what they thought SEO was, they'd have probably said it was, writing blog articles to, get traffic through search, and it's evolved to be much more than that. We very much look at brand and everything from the first touch point when someone gets to your site to that final conversion. And I think it's particularly true for startups when building the foundations of your site as well. So let's fly into content, which is the first of the 4 areas. So I think valuable stat here is that 96% of content gets no traffic from Google. So almost all of the web is essentially, sitting there with no organic traffic, and there's a huge amount of potential on your pages that you have in order to try and scale up traffic up. It's usually due to a number of different reasons. So first of all is that the topic has no search demand. So either you create a blog and you're talking about things that people aren't interested in, or you perhaps creating company pages, things like that, that ultimately aren't going to be driving traffic because people aren't sure how to, wouldn't know what to search in order to find that page. The second one is that the page has no authority. So an aspect of SEO that we'll move on to in the link section is that ultimately pages build authority by gaining backlinks or through internal links on your website. If a page has no authority or trust, it's likely that Google's not going to find that it's trustworthy enough to put in their index. So it's likely that you'll essentially not receive any traffic from that page. And the third, which is another big one to think about, is that the page doesn't match search intent. So for example, if someone's searching for red Nike shoes, for example, and you're writing an informational blog article that covers what Nike shoes are in 1,000 words, ultimately that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for a list of images of shoes that they can then check out and purchase. So ultimately, this is a huge waste of time and resource and can be avoided by conducting keyword research and matching search intent across your pages and what users are also trying to find. So let's look at an example using Heist, who sells hair styling solutions. So we can see from that Heist homepage, they've got a Heist hairdryer, scalp and beard brush, and Heist labs, and as well as a quiz. One opportunity would be to create a styling room section of the site, which links to product pages. So we can see that there is keyword research search demand for a range of different terms, such as styling for long hair, short hair, curly hair, thin hair. You get the picture, loads of different variations of that. So building out a styling section of the website could help you to generate traffic from people that are in that stage of looking for different ways to style their hair, and then you can feed in your transactional pages through there by linking to your hair dryer or hair products as well. And this is a good example of just how keyword research could help you to discover new opportunities, plan future product launches, and demonstrate growth to potential investors as well. There's a wide range of keyword research tools available that you can use to do this, all at different pricing levels. The 2 most well-known in the industry are SEMrush and Ahrefs. If you are looking to explore them, I can give you links to free trials. They are quite expensive if you take out an annual subscription, so just be mindful of that. but there also are a range of different freemium tools available too, such as also asked keyword insights and keyword tools. So have a look around, start searching for things that you think that your ideal customers would be looking for, and see if that matches up with search demand, and also if you have pages that cover that on your sites as well. And finally, with content, a common misconception is that Google index all pages across the web. This is not the case. It costs Google a lot of money to crawl the web and figure out what pages are relevant to search and which aren't. So indexing should be treated as a privilege and not a right. So essentially, this just means like when you look at your website, have a look at your pages and think, would somebody want to find this page through Google search? And if the answer is no, chances are that you might have issues with Google actually picking that page up and putting it in their index to make it eligible for people to see. To check this, there's a really easy way to do that. You can do that through Google Search Console. It's a free tool which shows organic performance and index coverage. So you just have to put a bit of tracking code on your website, and then you'll have access to Google Search Console. There's more on this, on what this tool can do slightly later in the deck, but essentially you can look at all the pages on your site and whether they're available to users or not. From this example, we can see that this site has 209 pages that aren't indexable to Google and 90 that are. From those pages that aren't indexable, we have 36 that have been discovered by Google. So Google's looked at these 36 pages and thought, actually, there's no value in inputting these in our search results. And chances are some of those could be key blog content or transactional pages that for whatever reason aren't indexed. And it gives you a clear picture of why your pages maybe aren't indexed or not, and you can take action from there. The next part of the four pillars that I'm going to cover is technical SEO. So technical SEO is the process of helping search engines to easily understand and crawl your website. It's a little bit more complex than content, links, and EAT, but I'm just going to cover the surface of this section. Ultimately, technical SEO is important, and its importance increases for larger websites, but there are several areas that are relevant to sites of all sizes, and ultimately it contributes to a better user experience. So one area of technical SEO that's relevant to all sites is page speed. Slow page speed can impact bounce rates, conversions, and organic performance. There's a tool called Page Speed Insights, which is via Google, and you can plug any URL into this website, and it'll tell you essentially out of 100 how fast your web page is, and it'll provide detailed granular recommendations on how you can improve it. And using Page Speed Insights, the average homepage score for the 18 cohort members that responded to the Google form was 50.6 out of 100. So definitely some room for improvements there in terms of optimizing those and making them a little bit faster. This follows on in terms of page speed insights and just some of those recommendations and diagnostics that I mentioned there. So it gives you a whole list of things that you can do to essentially improve page speed time across your site. But the common cause is usually large media files, which can be fixed through compressing images and using modern formats, so WebP and AVIF. And a cool stat to wrap this section up with is that 47% of users expect a maximum of 2 seconds loading time for an average website. So if your website is loading in 5, 6, 7 seconds, chances are that they're probably just going to either return to Google or close it down. Another common technical SEO issue is missing canonical tags. This is probably the most complex slide of the deck, so do bear with me. And if it's not something that you're sure about after this slide, do reach out and I can tell you a little bit more information. But a common technical SEO issue is essentially it comes from canonical tags, and a canonical tag is a tag that's used by websites to show Google what the parent version of a page is. It's not a directive in terms of them having to follow it, but they help search engines to understand the primary version of a page, and we can add self-referencing tags when relevant. They should also be used for when creating PPC landing pages and email campaigns. So a good example is, let's say that I have a page that's optimized for organic SEO, and it has lots of content and information on there, but I want a more streamlined version for a PPC campaign through either Google or social ads that's just focusing on the core product. That second page, which is the PPC version, would then be canonicalized back to the main version. And that removes the instances of Google not being sure which one to pick as the best. And if we go to the next slide, we can see that there are several sites that filled out the Google form that are missing canonical tags. They can usually be added via your CMS and should be self-referencing unless there is an alternative parent version of the same page. But in this instance, this was for the homepage, so chances are that you're not going to have a second version of your homepage. So all you'd need to do in here is just add a self-referencing canonical tag to your homepage to say to Google, hey, here's our homepage, and it's the parent version of the page. It's the page that we want to rank, and it gives them clearer signals when they're looking through your website. And a final note on technical SEO is that the removal or changing of pages should be handled correctly to assist search engines, reduce potential traffic loss, and provide a good user experience. So a few things here. Changing the URL string of a page means that it will be treated as a new page, and this requires search engines to recrawl the content. Typically, this is quite common for startups that maybe aren't aware that this happens. But if you're intending to maybe rewrite a blog post, change a transactional page, or whatever it is that you're looking to do, if you change that URL string, it will be treated as a brand new page. So something to be aware of. And when removing a page, you should update any internal links, remove the page from your sitemap, and either redirect or 410 remove the page from your site. If you don't do that and you kind of just leave it in the background, it may contribute to a sort of a lower holistic view of your overall site by search engines. Cool. So just coming on to links, I'm just going to take a quick drink and then we'll carry on. So the third key pillar of SEO alongside content and technical is links. Links are a key part of all SEO strategies by helping users and search engines discover important pages on your website while building authority. And there are two types of links that we'll quickly cover. The first one is internal links, and then the second one is backlinks, so any links that you get from external websites. So internal links are hyperlinks from one page to another on your site. We can see from the screenshot there, we've got a home page, which has structural links to several of those pages, but then there are also some contextual links as well, going from page to page. And these help users to navigate through your site while also spreading link equity. So it can have a positive impact on your organic rankings, but also help users find what they're looking for easier. And additionally, the more often a page is linked to, the more valuable search engines will perceive this to be. So a good example is if you write maybe a blog post about something and it has no links to it from anywhere on your site, essentially search engines will look at that and think, well, if this site owner doesn't care about this page and isn't willing to link to it from across the rest of their site, then why should we? So something to think about in terms of if you have any blog content or transactional pages that you really want to perform well, make sure that you're linking into those pages from the rest of your site as well. So ways that you can do that, there are several different ways. One of them is through your header and footer navigation. So make sure that any important subfolders or areas of your site are linked to from your header navigation. Unique HTML body copy. So as we can see from the screenshot of a BBC article, we can see that they've put HTML body copy links in some of their articles, and this works really well. These typically are the best ones because they're unique and they're not boilerplate across all of your websites, so they can have a bigger impact. And then sidebar linking blocks. So make sure that you're making use of any white space when you're on transactional pages or blog content by utilizing sidebar links. So it could be recent articles, relevant articles, links to transactional pages, anything that you think is good fit for users to essentially go to next. The second element of links is backlinks. So these are hyperlinks from external web pages to your website. These links often drive referral traffic, so this sends positive signals to Google, but it also allows you to get users on your website from external sites, usually news publishers, but can vary, and there are lots of opportunities out there. And if you are undertaking any digital PR efforts, then these should be ethical. So I wouldn't recommend going to a sort of like a link building agency and just paying £500 to get hundreds of links. It usually comes back to bite you. So focus on brand first when you take this approach, and this will allow you to gain long-term benefits. Following on from this, so continuing with backlinks. Without backlinks, it will be hard for your parent page, for your pages to rank for competitive keywords, and there are several ways that you can approach digital PR to scale your links. So first one is leveraging founder PR and asking investors to link to your site. This is a really easy win. Founder PR can be anything from why I quit my 9 to 5 to start up a social app, or why how I've done X, Y, or Z as a founder, what I've learned as a founder in my first 90 days, 2 years, whatever that period is. It doesn't necessarily have to be directly related to your product or service. It can be about you as a person, which typically works really well in those publications that are about business news and founder success. The second one is thought leadership stories with in-house and external experts. So if you've got maybe like a hair brand, for example, if we take Heist, talk about how maybe 75% of people prefer, I don't know, short hair over long hair. It can be something as simple as that. Seeking interviews, blog, video, and podcasts from industry publications. Appreciate this one can take a little bit more time and scoping out, but it can be a really effective way to drive links and traffic to your site through those third-party websites. And finally, leveraging first-party data to create press-worthy stories. So if you sit in on a gold field of first-party data, use it on your site, create blog content around it that's going to be engaging and enticing for third parties to link back to. There is a final one. So yeah, use external specialists if budget allows. Appreciate that startup costs may not allow you to do that, but if you do think that digital PR is a channel that's going to be successful for you in terms of scaling, then there are plenty of external specialists out there that can help you do that, that have access to press lists that can make your job a lot easier. So a few examples of this, we can see the first one's from OcuShield. So they spoke about how they turned down Dragon's Den and their company's now worth 7 million. That's an easy one to go out that doesn't necessarily focus on the product, but more so the owner and why they made that decision. And then a few other different stories from a few of our clients that talk about why they're car experts and the best time of year to buy a car, most accessible heritage sites, and lawyer reveals the one thing couples never know when getting divorced. So there's lots of different angles that you'll be able to take, and ultimately you're the experts in your fields and with the products and services that you're selling. So last off in this section, and I think we're doing pretty good for time. We'll probably have around 10 minutes or so left of this deck, and then we can run into some questions, is EAT. So EAT is a concept that's quite hard to say, but it essentially was first introduced in 2018. While it's not a direct ranking factor, it should play a pivotal role in any website strategy. And it stands for experience. So essentially, when you have pages on your website, do you have the experience to talk about it? Perhaps if you're talking about, the best meetup spots in London, have you actually been to them, or are you just making them from a list through Google Maps? Expertise. So are you credible to be talking about it? What gives you the sort of the right to be talking about this subject? Authoritativeness. So this is how much of an authority you are online, how many links you have to your website, and those kind of things. So for example, if the BBC was to start talking about the local election, the general election coverage, they'd perform much better than maybe a tiny little website that's just covering their local town. And then trust. So how trustworthy is your website? Is it believable? Are you providing information that's accurate and genuine as well? So improved EAT signals also have wider benefit alongside improved organic performance potential. They ultimately improve conversion rates across all channels, increase the likelihood of external websites linking to your domain, and it allows you to do better website storytelling for potential investors. And some of the ways that you can demonstrate EAT are explored on the next few slides. So the first one is to create author pages on your site. So this allows you to demonstrate why you're qualified to be talking about relevant topics, and you can include links to social profiles, qualifications, and industry experience. A classic example here is Martin Lewis and Money Savings Expert. We can see that there's a really detailed author bio from Martin Lewis that talks about why he's essentially qualified to be talking about financial subjects. And then you can also create author bios in your blog content. So this is just a short summary of why you're a credible source within your industry, and you can use it to include a link to your author page, which has a little bit more information. So we can see that Martin Lewis, on all of the articles that he creates, has a small snippet which essentially talks about why he's credible. And we can see that his name's often referenced throughout the page as well to instill that trust among users. Another thing that you can do is provide or seek expert commentary where possible, particularly in the financial and medical fields. So it's quite handy if you can have little segments on your either transactional or blog content that says our expert says, or we'd recommend, or different snippets that essentially pull users into that area of the site and gives them clear recommendations on what they should do. And you can also leverage first-party data to display expertise. So this also ties into the link section, but it increases the likelihoods of external websites linking to your content. This is one from Go Compare that talks about how their research has revealed the biggest concerns for motorists in 2024, and then it goes into providing the data throughout the page as well. Alongside authors and using yourself as experts, you can also showcase reviews, testimonials, and award wins across your site to increase social proof and build trust. This is ultimately going to feed into conversions and conversion rate and allow users to have that trust in your site before they take an action. A few examples here from the RAC on the breakdown cover page where they've got what our customers are saying, as well as a recent award win. So if you do have any review channels that you can pull in or award wins, do leverage them across your site. And then a final one here is creating content that showcases first-hand experience can be much more effective and increase click-through rates. And this will also help your content stand out from AI written articles. So this was taken from Chima, who works at Moz, but instead of writing how to, write about how I. So you can see that how I evolved our email marketing strategy to 50% plus opens is a much more enticing article title than how to do email marketing in 2024. So really leverage that first-hand experience and make it more about you and the learnings that people can take from that rather than just generic copy on your site, which is typically stuff that we just see all types of sites trying to do when ranking for content. So a few common mistakes. So duplicate or thin content is definitely one of the big ones when it comes to the mistakes that we see across SEO and website content. So duplicate content happens when multiple pages are trying to answer the same question. And as a result, these pages end up competing with each other for organic visibility. And most of the time, both will end up performing poorly. Here's a good example from a savings website where they've got two separate articles that both answer the question, what is compound interest? So any search engine looking at that will struggle to determine which is the one that has the highest value, and it might be the case that both end up performing much worse than having one consolidated page. Thin content is slightly different. It occurs when a page has a low word count with little value to users. A common trigger of this is when you categorize blogs and you end up with 0 or few listed pages. So we can see that on the OU Kitchens website, if you click on case studies, there are no items found. So this would be an example of thin content because ultimately there's nothing on that page that's going to add any value to the users that visit. And this can send negative signals to search engines about the overall quality of your site and just provide a general poor user experience in general. The second one is focusing on head terms. So a common mistake for new sites is to focus on ranking for head terms, which essentially is the highest search volume and most popular term in your industry. They're usually highly competitive and typically dominated by established brands and usually have a much lower conversion rate. So if we think of an example like hairdryer, for example, someone might be looking for that for various reasons. They might be looking for different colors, different sizes, a new socket, the hairdryer might have broken, all kinds of different reasons. And if you scale down and actually focus on those longer tail keywords, an example from high-speed men's hair dryers or something even further than that, maybe like men's hair dryers travel, for example. This will allow you to improve your chances of generating clicks. They're typically keywords that are much easier to rank for, and you're going to get users that are at the bottom of the funnel landing on your site rather than those that are still in the exploratory stage. Another one is poor metadata. So title tags and meta descriptions help search engines to better understand the content of your page, and they also influence click-through rate. So title tags are a ranking factor and should be between 30 and 60 characters. You should aim to include the focus keyword on the page where possible as well. So using OU as an example again, they've got a really clear title, which is OU Kitchens, Commercial Kitchens Marketplace. So anyone that sees that really clearly knows what they're going to be finding when they click on that page. And then the second one is meta descriptions. So that's the little piece of copy that goes underneath. These aren't a ranking factor, but they do influence click-through rate and should be around 70 to 155 characters. So if we just go to the next slide, a few examples that I found from the cohort that filled in the Google form. There are a few websites that had titles or meta descriptions that were too long. So we can see Learnhoods at 314 characters. Those ones just need to be reduced, otherwise Google will truncate that and essentially just show the first half of it. And you want to make sure that what Google is showing is the right copy and right text, because it could be that the second half of that meta description is actually what is the most impactful. And then there were some sites that had further optimization that was required. So we can see some of them either have just your brand name and no information about what it is that your products or services are, or meta descriptions that aren't specified. Typically, when this happens, Google will rewrite them and they'll just try and crawl your homepage to determine what that should be. And there's a risk there that if they're looking at the wrong thing, then it might detract users from actually clicking on your pages. So a quick one on how to optimize for wider channels. So ensure that any tracking links from PPC or email campaigns are either no indexed or canonicalized to a parent page. Here's a good example from the RAC, which I touched on a little earlier in the deck. We can see that they've got an index page, which is super detailed, has loads of FAQs, loads of call to actions on the left. That's the one that's visible to search engines. And then on the right-hand side is a no-index PPC page, which is much more streamlined, just talks about the benefits and tries to get users to convert without all of that extra copy that helps them rank for SEO terms. You can also leverage SEO content by redistributing it across socials, emails, and wider channels when appropriate. So going back to that keyword research, if you find something that you know is successful and that people are searching for, use that to create further copy or content for email campaigns, or turn it into maybe a social image or something like that. And you can also compare your organic performance against PPC campaigns to reduce or increase budget when required. So maybe if you're ranking poorly for something, you can bid on PPC while you're working to increase organic performance. Or similarly, if you're ranking really well for it through SEO, you can scale your PPC efforts down. Just touching on analytics again, one final time. So Google Search Console is a free tool that allows you to monitor organic performance at a website, page, and query level, amongst other things. So this is a quick screenshot from the Blue Array site. So it allows us to compare performance over the last 1 month to the previous month, 3 months versus past 3 months, and so on and so forth. It'll tell you all of the queries that you are gaining traffic from, and you can look at a deeper level to see which pages they're coming from. And that'll allow you to see if there are any queries that you maybe didn't know about. You can then bid on PPC terms for them. You can also potentially create more detailed content around it if it's a topic that's performing well, and things like that. So it opens up a whole host of opportunities for you as you start to build out your website. So quickly to summarize, so your website should be viewed as a fundamental part of your brand, which will influence both prospective customers and potential investors. Taking an SEO first approach can positively impact holistic marketing efforts, and first impressions are really key. So have a look at your homepage or your websites and think about what a user would think when they land on it for the very first time. Just touching on SEO one final time, so executing fundamental SEO tactics provides several benefits. The first and most obvious one is increased organic search visibility, but it also allows you to improve trust signals through EAT and establishing yourself as a real authority in your space. And it allows you to have an expanded customer journey coverage by covering all touch points from top of funnel to bottom of funnel as well. Final one is just those secondary benefits across wider channels as well, and redistributing content. So just to wrap up, how Blue Array can help. So we can provide office hours. So do get in touch if you'd like to have a quick chat about your sites one-to-one. More than happy to set those up and go through them in a little bit more detail. If you are thinking about SEO as a service stream or digital PR, we offer affordable mini audits starting at £250 plus VAT. So a relatively low price point entry. And then we have a service called Blue Array Ignite, which is a 12-month dedicated program for startups and scale-ups. So maybe if you're a little bit more advanced in that journey, do let us know, and that's something that we could look at. And final one is we also pay a 10% referral fee on all retainer services. So if you have any friends, do feel free to introduce them and you can get a nice paycheck. And we have a wide range of partners across PPC, web dev, translations, etc. More than happy to introduce you to someone who might be a right fit for you if it's not ourselves. In terms of contact details, this is the last slide. So my email is liam@bluearray.co.uk, and I will leave the slide on for a second. If anyone does want to connect on LinkedIn, you can scan that QR code. But that's pretty much everything. So yeah, I guess any questions? I don't know if you want to run it, Purdy, or if everyone just jumps in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I can see that Harry and Ashley have raised their hands, and Maddie. I don't know if that's because you've got questions or you're interested in talking one-on-one or something like that. So Harry, do you want to just take yourself off mute if it's a question and ask away?
It is a question, yeah. Liam, that was super helpful. Thank you. A quick question I have. So I originally built our website on Squarespace, which, as my web designing skills have moderately advanced, I'm looking to rebuild the website on something else, whether it's Webflow or WordPress, something similar. If you rebuild a website
Mhm.
and then I migrate our URL over, uh, do we inherit our previous SEO rankings and characteristics? How does that translate if I've sort of rebuilt the site?
Yeah, really good question. So if all of your URLs stay the same, and you're not changing any of the URLs, then you would still keep that brand authority and any of that trust that you've built up. If you are changing URL strings, then it does come with a little bit more complexity, and Google will need to recrawl all of the new URLs, pick up all the redirects from the old ones to the new ones. So it typically does impact traffic. But if you were just to do a lift and shift and go from Squarespace to, say, WordPress, and everything stays the same, then it wouldn't have any impact now.
And sort of follow on question from that. I've had a bit of advice on Squarespace doesn't do fantastically from SEO perspective. For some of the things you said about site loading time and stuff like that. Do you have any opinion on the best platforms to build your website on from an SEO perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I've worked with a couple of Squarespace websites, and I do agree that I tend to find more of a challenge getting those to rank strongly. The um, the CMS that you choose will essentially be governed by what type of site you have. So, like if you're an e-commerce function, you might want to look at Shopify. But I tend to find that WordPress, Wix is a good one that previously might have had a bad reputation, but it's put a lot of effort into their SEO tools on their site. Um, as long as you follow in best practice, there shouldn't be necessarily a wrong choice. But I agree that your WordPresses and Shopify's and Wix's of the world are a step up from Squarespace in terms of making it more accessible for you to start ranking. If you wanted to have a separate chat about how to approach that, I'm more than happy to put some time in and we can go through a bit of a migration checklist.
Awesome. Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks. Do you want to stop sharing and then we can see everybody again? It might make it a bit easier. Hopefully everyone's got your email now and we can share it in the WhatsApp group later as well.
Yep.
Ashley.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Liam. That was really useful. And yeah, thanks for highlighting our website on things that we're not doing too well on and some things we're doing all right on as well. So appreciate that. My question was actually, we've dedicated a fair bit of time to SEO because being a marketplace, we want to rank highly. My question was actually more around, so we've engaged with an agency and we're now looking at the next stage of the contract. Is it normal for a startup to put KPIs in with their agency to make sure that the agency that they're using is performing well? Because it was something that we have actually put into the next contract, but we weren't sure whether the KPIs were normal in the industry and yeah, whether that was a good benchmark to have as something to work towards.
Yeah, another good question. We always try and put KPIs towards our goals. So I guess I can't speak for how other agencies would look at it, but we typically would create like a 12-month North Star goal. Usually it has like a top level metric. So we'd say we want to increase non-branded traffic by X% or from 500 clicks to 2,500 across a year. And typically that probably should be governed by search demand in your industry. So for someone who's in e-commerce, they might have a huge opportunity. For someone who's in a much more niche field, like there's no point in saying we want to increase from 1,000 to 100,000 if the search demand doesn't warrant it and it's just not there. So I think it is a case of using keyword research to govern what those goals would look like. But ultimately, yes, I think they should be tracked against at least a top level non-branded goal. And then you can have some further input metrics that are included in that. So conversions should definitely be one. Any good SEO agency should also be considering the impact of conversions and not just ranking for vanity content that's not going to do anything. And then you could also have a few things like we want to create, I don't know, like 20 new pages throughout the year. We want to reduce like technical issues by X% or whatever those things are that feed in. But yeah, I would definitely look to put KPIs in there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Maddie.
Thanks, Liam. That was super helpful. I've read and heard at the moment that Google much prefers websites that sell some sort of product on it as opposed to just content-based websites. Just would be interested to hear your opinion if there's truth to that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, and the world of search engines and Google's has massively changed over the last year or two with the influx of AI and quite a few core updates from Google. I can totally understand that. Ultimately, it's a sort of and it depends, and it's more of a subjective answer, to be quite frank. But from my standpoint, yes, you ultimately want to be offering value to users. So if you are purely informational, like what is the end goal of someone getting to your site? Is it just so that you can make money on your own, or is there something that you can do to help them? So if it is the case that you don't necessarily have a product or service to guide them to, make sure that there's some value add in the content that you produce in, rather than just trying to get people on your site to essentially create revenue through ads. So it's quite a subjective question. I think Google's definitely shifted the way that they're ranking websites, particularly when we see like review sites, for example. They seem to have seen a fair bit of drop off. But I think if you got product or service or unique insights to provide to someone, then you should still be fine regardless of those two things.
Sure, that makes sense. And just a bit of context, in my company is an app. So obviously the website links to download from the App Store, the Play Store. But I don't think that would count as like buying a product. Or do you know how Google would recognize what that action would be?
Yeah, Google will still be able to determine that the links that you're sending people to are an app store or a conversion place. So I wouldn't worry too much about the fact that like your end destination for users is an app. I think where people talk about that question, it's more so sites that just have a bunch of informational content that's maybe like answering short form questions just to purely try and get traffic, where Google can clearly see that you have a value proposition and something for users to do or take. That shouldn't really fall into that category of just producing informational content with no purpose.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. There's a question from Phil in the chat. In terms of both UX and SEO, what's preferred, either multiple pages or infinite scroll?
Good question, Phil. This is one that's slightly more technical. So essentially, for anyone that doesn't know what infinite scroll is, it's when you scroll down a page and it loads the content in. So if you had a blog, for example, you just carry on scrolling, you'd see the first maybe 16 results, you scroll down, you see 17 to 32 and so on and so forth. Or the other option is you see the first 16 results and then you click page 2 and then page 3 and then page 4 and so on. It doesn't necessarily matter which one you choose as long as they're implemented correctly. Quite often people will fall into traps with both. So just going into infinite scroll, essentially what happens when you scroll from that first 16 results to the second, that's treated as a new page to Google. So you need to make sure that there are links in your HTML copy that in your source code that show that you're moving from page 1 to page 2. Otherwise, Google might not be able to see it. And similarly with multiple pages, if you're clicking from page 1 to page 2, quite often your CMS might canonicalize page 2, 3, 4, 5 back to the first one, and that's a bad mistake that often startups fall into because they just don't know that that's a problem. I appreciate the question was more around UX as well. I think from a UX standpoint, infinite scroll can definitely be a good one to approach. But think about it from, I guess, the size of your website. If you have 300, 400, 500 pages, can people find relevant and helpful articles, or do they have to continually scroll in forever and ever to find something that's relevant to them? So either option that you take, like there's no real right or wrong, but make sure that you're categorizing content to make it easier for them to get to where they want to be.
Thanks. There was 2 other questions that came up in the chat as you were going through the deck, but one of them links to what you were just saying. So for anyone that's unsure, canonical, high level, what does it mean?
Yeah, I think that was definitely the hardest slide to put together. basically, I'll try and come back to the example of a paid version of like a PPC version of a page versus a standard. So let's say that you have a home page that has loads of stuff on it, and then you have a second version of the homepage. Maybe you want to trial it through A/B testing. You want to send it to users that are maybe further along the funnel or something like that. That second version of the page, which is not your main version, you just need to tell Google that, hey, this is like a child version of this page. We want you to not treat it as a separate entity. We want you to treat them as the same, and they will only rank like the one that is the canonicalized version of it. It's quite a difficult concept to explain, but if anyone is struggling to understand it, I'm happy to send some more resources that's probably easier to digest in written format. It's not something to hugely worry about with smaller sites, but it's something to think about. I'd say for the most part, for all of your sites, all you'd have to do is add a self-referencing tag. I don't think that there'll be a scenario where you've got two versions of a pages that are completely competing with each other, unless there is a PPC version of it. So if you go in there, a great example is the homepage, just add a self-referencing canonical tag, and it just says to Google and search engines, you're on this page, which is our homepage, and this is the correct page that you're supposed to be on. There isn't another version of it that we think is better, like you are in the right place, and this is the page that we want you to rank. So it can help just send trust signals to them that they know that they're in the right place, and this is the page that you want to perform through organic search. But yeah, appreciate that it's a tough concept to kind of explain without visuals. So if anyone's struggling with that and wants to follow up, just let me know.
Thank you. And the last one that came in was, what is first party data?
So first party data is just essentially anything that you can share on your website that is data that you've collected. So it could be the case that if we take, for example, Loanhood, for example, let's say that, I don't know, 70% of users that land on the app are looking for women's dresses, or like the in-season shopping trend right now that we found on our app is this piece of clothing or this color or whatever it might be. That's first party data that ultimately no other site would be able to find because it's data that you have access to. And then you'd be able to share that across your site, across your socials. And if you go out to journalists and press and say, here's a story that we've created on our blog, it's all around like seasonality of purchases of fashion rental. We found that 70% of people are looking for, I don't know, t-shirts instead of sweatshirts or whatever. Like it needs to be a little bit more interesting than that, but you get the idea. Then the chances are that they could write a story about it and cover it in like a fashion website, for example. So it allows you to get traction from those industry publications.
Awesome. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time. And thanks for doing all of that research on the 18 founders that submitted the type form or whatever it was, Google form.
No problem.
It was nice seeing some of their examples in the presentation, brought it to life a lot more. So appreciate the time on that. For everyone here, I'm going to stop the recording now.